So this is what the class tool looks like. The manuals look like. We are today focusing on the middle one, the toddler, which is 15 to 36 months. If you look on the left on the infant months, you'll notice that the age range is overlapping with the toddler. So the observer that comes into your classroom will determine which tool to use for your classroom, because what we're looking for is majority above the age of 15. So if you do 15 months. So if you do have a classroom that is more, majority are not above the 15-month, but are more the 18-month and below range, then you will want to also watch this webinar for the infant version, because that's what the class tool, that's the class tool that will be used by the observer. So we are focusing this on the toddler, and class defines that for 15 to 36 months. So how do we assess? The class tool is broken down into what we call domains. And domains, if you will, are the overarching ideas or overarching, kind of what we want to see in interactions with, or how we can break it down when we're measuring the interactions with the children. So one age group, the overarching idea is responsive caregiving. So it's really, meeting the needs and very, very responsive to what the children are looking for. So we're just following their lead, essentially. So that's one age group. The second age group is broken down a little bit more, it's separated out a little bit more, and it's looking at it in two different ways: emotional behavioral support and also engaged support for learning. So you see that it's starting to become a little bit more complex in their thinking, probably, and in their interactions. And the third age group, it's even broken down even further, where we can really look at a classroom in three different ways of emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. So I'm sure you have guessed which age group goes with which of these domains. So the infant is in responsive caregiving, toddler, which we'll be focused on today for this webinar, is the second one, and of course pre-K is the third one. So why are we so focused on interactions? So if we go back to the basics of child development, and one of the pioneers in early childhood philosophy is Lev Vygotsky. And one of the main things that he learned through all his research is that children are learning from shared experience with others, that their knowledge and skills are increased through these interactions. So every interaction that a child has a direct impact on how they feel about themselves and how they learn. So it's not a small task by any means. A lot is going on in these interactions that we are having with the children and that they're having with each other. So that's the key in any relationship, really, is those interactions. So what are the interactions? We really can break those down into three categories. And the categories are not anything that you necessarily need to memorize or anything, but just know that these are the three aspects of it: the social aspect of it, and then there's the behavior and classroom management. We also want to look at the interactions in those settings, and also the learning and cognitive development. What kind of interactions are we having when children are really using their cognitive skills, enhancing their cognitive skills? So those categories really lend itself to the way the class tool is organized. So we are focusing in the middle column, that is the toddler. So the social development is measured in these dimensions. So from that overarching idea that we saw earlier of the emotional and behavioral support, the column in the middle is broken down even further within that domain of these dimensions. So this really focuses on those social development of the children. And the behavior guidance is what's focused really for the behavior and classroom management aspect of interactions. And language and cognitive development focuses on these three dimensions, and we're going to go through every single one of the dimensions for the toddler in this webinar. So what is class? So the way that I really like to describe what class is as the way is as a structure. So what do we need? So basically we want a strong structure, which is the child, right? When in those early years, we want them to form that full holistic person as they move on to the into the higher grades and into adulthood. So what do we need first in that structure? Whenever we're building, we need our foundation. So as it pertains to the toddler tool, this is the emotional behavioral support. So that domain really supports the that foundation. So this is where we see the relationship building, meeting their just their daily needs. And then once we have the foundation down, what do we need in the structure? We need the walls to go up. So in the toddler tool, that is also, I would consider that to be in the domain of the engaged support for learning. So this is where we are, really looking at the, there's kind of a little bit of an overlap. So some of the behavior management will come into the walls because you're looking at, setting the schedule, making sure things are organized in the classroom and the children know the rules and the expectations are very clear and consistent. And then also, that's where you're building that support to start on their cognitive learning, working on building their cognitive skills. So now that we have the walls up, now we need to finish it off with the roof. So the roof, again, is really going deeper into that engaged support for learning, where we're asking those questions to get them into that different level of thinking and challenges. So it's a good, just a visual to think about what the class tool is really, building that foundation and setting up the structure and finishing it off with the roof. So this is the scoring scale. It's a 1 through 7 scale, 1 and 2 being in the low range to up to 6 and 7 being in the high range. Don't get bogged down on this, but just for you to know how it is being scored. And what the assessor, the observer, will be looking for is anything that's happening in the classroom. How often is it happening? Is it happening, quite frequently? Is it only happening rarely, or is it happening sometimes? So as we're going through all the dimensions, just think about those words, and that really reflects on the score. So it's pretty straightforward, if you will. There's no, guessing. It's really just looking at, the essence of what is happening in the classroom. If we are seeing it happen often, then you're going to be in the high range. If it's a dimension that may not be really happening consistently all the time, then it's going to be in the mid-range, etc. So let's get into the domains of the toddler tool. The first one is the emotional and behavioral support. And the first piece of it, the first dimension, as you can see, there are 5 dimensions within this tool, or within this domain. The first one is positive climate. So let's get into that. So positive climate, the first indicator is relationships. And the key one that I want to point out here, you can see that there are a few others, but the key one I want to point out here is that this is where the peer relationships is being measured, that the children are enjoying being with each other, but there's not, there's going to be, some issues here and there, but we're really looking at the overall interactions in the classroom as being positive between the peers. Okay, and positive affect, we're looking at verbal or physical affection. One of the things that we want to be, of course, respectful of is what a child's preference is, and also what a child's developmental and physical preferences. So a child may be overstimulated by hugs. Of course, we do not want to, encourage, nor do we expect teachers to do that if it's not appropriate. And of course, within where you work, what the limitations are. And one of the key ways to tell if this is a very natural thing or if it's kind of made up we want to make sure that you do not feel that you need to put on a show for the observer. And this one is a very kind of a clear indicator. If the child kind of shies away from the affection, then you know that this is not something that the child is used to getting from the adult in the classroom. The respectful language is a key one here. We're wanting to see names being used, not sweetie, and all those different terms of endearment, which are very kind and loving, but we want to show respect for each individual child by using their name. And of course, using please and thank yous on all those polite language are also measured here. The other one here is the body orientation, is making sure that we're not touching children without letting them know ahead of time that we're going to do that. Okay, so negative climate, unfortunately, we do have to mention this one. Certain things are measured here as to just harsh voice and yelling and threats. And threats can be something, it's not huge, it doesn't have to be looked at in the huge kind of picture, but even things like, if you don't do this, then you're going to lose this toy. That is a threat, and that is something we want to be very, very aware of, and know that that's not something that reflects high quality interaction. Teacher negativity, we want to be careful on what kind of voice we are using with the teacher, with the children in the classroom. Sometimes we talk to each other and say things that obviously the child can hear, and even if they don't understand the words, they can understand the tone. So those are things we want to be very careful about. And teasing and humiliation, of course, if there is something that you do need to discipline a child on, that you want to do it kind of quietly and away from the group, so it's not anything that you're bringing everybody's attention to. Child negativity is also measured here, but the key word is going to be focusing on the escalating. So of course, these are toddlers, things are going to happen. Things are going to happen, especially when there's another person in the classroom who's watching and observing. So that's not going to be a surprise. However, the escalation of that behavior is what is going to be really assessed here. So it may, biting might happen. That's not far-fetched in a classroom of toddlers. However, does it keep happening? What is the teacher doing about it, etc.? Teacher sensitivity is the third dimension. And one of the things that I want to point out here is this is not about how nice a teacher is. It's really about being responsive and aware of the children. So looking for those subtle clues to notice that a child may be upset, looking for just the body language, etc. That's being aware. Responsiveness, that you are acknowledging and accepting emotions, that you're not brushing off somebody's small scratch and saying, oh, you'll be fine, but listening to what that child is feeling and acknowledging how they feel about it, not what you think of it, is something that we want to be aware of. Child comfort, genuine problem resolution. I think this is a key one here, that that when you are helping a child solve a problem, that they are truly okay with the solution, not just pacified for the time being, but that they are part of the solution if they are able to work it out. And the key here would be, if you see that it's happening over and over again, then it was not genuinely resolved for that child. So that is something to be aware of. That a child is completely okay with something when they can engage back into an activity. But if they're really stuck on something and sitting around, then that it was not okay for them yet. Okay, and then the fourth one is regard for child perspectives. And the indicators here, we have child focus. So eliciting children's expressions and ideas. So this is where, things like the child can choose the book for story time. The children can choose the songs that are coming up. You're doing an art activity. They have choices in colors. etc. So that it is child focused and it's following the children's lead. We want to hear the teachers asking what do they like and giving that to them. The second piece of it is, second indicator is flexibility. Are you adjusting the pace for individual child? So we're not rushing through. We are giving them time to finish. A child may take, uh, you know, the entire time that you had planned 5 other activities for doing one activity, but you let that be. You just take it as it comes and you just go with it. Is what we're measuring here. Support for independence. Key here, especially in the toddler classroom, is that the materials are accessible to the children. There has been, many classrooms that I'm sure you can think of, and that, I have seen that, for example, the musical instruments are way up high. The teacher is the one who has to be able, who has to get that down. Children do not have independent use of materials. So, of course, you're going to base that on your children and what they can handle, etc. But essentially, we want to see this available for the children because it helps promote that independence and eventually, develops that confidence. And it's a good time to point out here, as we're talking about the independence and the confidence, the previous dimensions that we talked about really, talked about that relationship building. This is all part of that relationship building when you are providing the simple thing as putting the materials down low for the children to access, that shows that you have confidence in that child or the children. So then that will in return lead them to be better connected with you and with the other children. So they're not always needing to get help. The confidence you give them will come back in them proving that with that independence. So all these dimensions and domains really tie in together and they all build upon each other. So that's something we want to think about because positive climate, giving them the smiles and the hugs and really, forming that wonderful, warm relationship in the classroom is something that we all are so good at doing, and now we're challenging ourselves to take it to the next step, and that's what these dimensions keep building on. So going into behavior guidance, which is the final dimension in the emotional and behavioral support domain, we are looking at the teachers being proactive. So you are communicating clear expectations. So do they know the routines? Do they know what's coming up next, or is it a surprise? And the chances are, if it's a surprise, the children are not going to be, it's going to be hard for them to cooperate through that. So, we want to be, again, very aware of who are the children in the classroom. Of course, there's fun surprises, but not all of a sudden changing the routine, because that's going to lead into possible behavior issues that you probably don't want to deal with when you don't have to, because you are communicating those clear expectations for the children. Supportive positive behavior, and the one I want to point out here is positive phrasing of the desired behavior. So we want to say what we want to see, not what we don't want to see. Saying that you would like them to find the trampoline to go jump on is very different from saying stop jumping on the sofa. So we just want to stop for a second. It's very easy and quick to say don't do this and don't do that. We want to make sure we are giving the children the essentially redirecting and giving them the positive things that they can do to still be able to continue the jumping that they want to do right then. So the next one is problem behavior. Minimal waiting. Waiting is one of the key reasons that a lot of children end up with having a hard time with their behavior, controlling their behavior because they have to wait. So what can we do if you have to have those wait times in the classroom? It's a great skill for the children to learn, but what can we do? Can we sing a song while we're waiting in line? Can we look at the pictures on the wall as we're walking in the hallway? Different things like that to keep them engaged. So they are not just spending their time waiting. All right, so let's look at a video that shares some good examples of some of the things that we talked about. So for this video, we are going to focus on the positive climate dimension. And what I would like you to look at is just how are the teachers, showing warmth and enjoyment as they are singing with the children, and also how they are encouraging this activity eventually leads to a group of children forming their own group. So it's a short video. Here we go.
Are we doing row, row? Okay. Row, 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 gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. You like her hair?
It's different for her, isn't it? You were very happy today, Ava. You had a big smile. Joyce, I see you doing some.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Can we all three play? Oh, look at our other three friends there. Oh, how wonderful. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
So a great little video to demonstrate positive relationships. So, you see the teacher is kneeling down beside the child, or beside the children, and getting down on their level, and is very interested in what's happening. You see the children clasping hands together to show that they are very comfortable with one another. The teacher is smiling and saying things like, "Oh, how wonderful." And the teacher gives that child that physical affection by taking hands and joining, as the child, as one of the children comes in and joins in the play, and the voice is super warm. Her body is oriented towards the children. She's very much showing that she is engaged. So this is a great video to demonstrate positive climate. And we're going to watch one more video here that is going to be focused on the behavior guidance dimension. So let's take a look at that one. And this one is
Here we go.
to pull this one up. Okay. Sorry about that. A second to pull this one up. So again, I'm sorry about that. This one is called, this one we're going to focus on the behavior guidance dimension. So look for the positive strategies that the teacher uses to encourage the child to follow rules, and the strategies that she uses to ensure that the child remains engaged in the activity.
Here we go. Let's see what she's going to do. This is called Millions of Snowflakes. Only one baby one. One little snowflake. Oh, he's all by himself. Falls on my nose. Show me your nose, Casey. Where's your nose? Summer, where's your nose? You know what, Casey? That's fun that you can climb, but I need you to sit on your bottom now while we're reading our story, because your feet almost hit Duncan. Yes, you can climb there when we're done with our story, okay?
Look, the one little snowflake fell on her nose. It makes me shiver. From where, Casey? From my head to my toes. Where's your toes, Casey? Show me your toes. There they are. Now, how many snowflakes? 2 little snowflakes. Get in my...
So this teacher demonstrated how she is monitoring the child, even though she is engaged with the book, she's definitely paying attention to what is happening with the child. And some of the other things we saw here were how she was very supportive of him by redirecting him, not by saying things like, you need to sit down, you need to do any of those, but show me your nose. So it was very subtle redirections. So hoping that he's going to just come down on his own. But then when he doesn't, she very much specifically says, I need you to sit down on your bottom. So while we're reading, and that he can do it later. So there were options that were given to him. And she also gave him the reason why his feet needs to come down so it does not hit Duncan. So great examples of what this looks like in actuality. All right, so the next domain. So we are done with that emotional support domain. So now we are at the engaged support for learning domain. And this has 3 dimensions underneath it. So let's start with the facilitation of learning and development. And essentially the facilitation of learning and development is looking at how the teacher facilitates learning in the classroom to meet the children's development, and how the teacher connects and the activities, how the learning is connected into these activities. So the first indicator here is active facilitation. What I want to point out here is that the teacher provides opportunities for explorational learning. So that it's not just putting an activity out there, but how are we really spending that time with the child actively involved and guiding them through the learning is what we are looking at here. The second, expansion of cognition. Teacher integrates concepts across activities and tasks so that it is connecting them to things in their lives, different experiences. So, one activity that we're doing today, the concept can relate to another activity that we did, a couple of weeks ago, and we are reminding them of that and, helping it make sense to things that they are already familiar with, that they're encouraging thinking skills. So how can we do that? Is by really engaging them in conversations and asking those amazing questions, etc. Children's active engagement. So we are seeing manipulation of materials. So it's not that just the teacher that is engaging, or presenting, because these are toddlers. We want them to be the ones who are touching these things. And the best way to show that the children are actively engaged is that their involvement increases and their interest increases as they are participating. So it's a great measure. Okay, so the next dimension is quality of feedback. And the first indicator here is scaffolding. So this is building on previous knowledge is what scaffolding is. So are we giving them guidance? Remember what we had to do to get that circle through that hole? Did it fit in this one or did it fit in that one? Kind of giving them hints so they can come up with ways of solving it on their own. Providing information. So we want to expand and elaborate on things. So a child might come to you and say that it is, raining outside and that they couldn't see the sun. So you can definitely give them, more language, more feedback to that by saying, yes, there's a lot of dark clouds in the sky and the sun is behind those clouds. So you're giving them, information by expanding on a concept that they brought to you. And encouragement and affirmation, this really, giving them not just a nice and that's great, but you're, really saying, keep trying. You just have to do one more and then you're there, and, really giving them that specific feedback to what it is that they are working on. Okay, and then we're definitely recognizing there's accomplishments. And the reason this is key is because going back to that confidence builder, this really builds their confidence for what it is that they've done, because they're really working on their own and working very hard. Okay, and the last dimension is language modeling. So supporting language use is the first indicator. And the one marker that I wanted to point out here is contingent responding, so that your response is directly to what it is that the child is saying, not just talking about something because that's what you're focused on, but listening to them and responding back to them. And open-ended questioning. This is where we want to hear those why and how questions, and not the what questions, because the what and when, those really tend to have your one-word answers, or a correct answer. So we talk about the confidence again. If we do the open-ended questioning, you can really hear the child's thinking, and also this gives you the child a chance to use a lot of language. Okay, and repetition and extension. Again, this gives you that opportunity to add extra descriptive words to the child, who may be looking out the window, or when you're on a walk at a tree that is changing colors, and say, oh, green leaf. And then, the very next leaf is a yellow leaf. So now you get to give them a little bit more and say, oh, you see a green leaf and a yellow leaf, because it's fall, it's changing colors. And also this gives them, for the ones that are still just working on their language and just coming up with those words, they may, they have their ideas, but they don't have full words yet. You're really giving them that extra bit by extending on what they're saying. Self and parallel talk is a great way to also giving them that language, just by simply describing what it is that you are doing. So it's just essentially being a narrator and describing what's happening in the classroom and what you are doing. Advanced language, we definitely want to hear, because children are listening and they're learning from you. So we want you to be labeling things in the classroom, labeling their behavior and everything. And that is the end of the dimension. So let's watch one video to show the what it looks like in the classroom for the engaged support for learning. This one is called, this one is focused on the quality of feedback dimension. And let me pull it up for you. So for this, what we want you to look at, how the teacher is giving the child time to do what it is that the child is working on, the puzzle. We also want you to look at how the teacher is helping the child be very persistent in this. And
thank you. Maybe more rope?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Look at, there's more rope. I bet that's the end of it. Should we try?
Let's try.
Are you going to help us put this together too?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm happy. Because we need help, don't we, Jack?
Yeah.
Did you find it? It didn't fit? Oh. Well, let's see. How about this one? I bet this one. Does that go down there? That's the window. Oh, look at this one. Look at this piece I found.
The puppy.
It's got the puppy in it. And I bet. See, here's the fireman. Oh, Kyrie, careful. Try that. Or try it maybe right there if it doesn't. Here, turn it around. Look at, try that way. You did it. You did it. Let's see.
So in this video, we saw that there's a bit of scaffolding happening. The teacher, when the child said there's no rope, the teacher points to one of the pieces in the puzzle and says, excuse me, sorry about that, that there is more rope. I bet that's the end of it. So, and then gave him a little bit of a clue about where it might fit. And when the child was not successful in fitting that piece, the teacher continues, but by giving him that back and forth exchange, they're talking a little bit more and say, well, let's see, how about this one? Does it go down here? And gives him many other hints. You know, that's the window, here's the fireman. Try turning the puzzle piece around. So, you know, very specific hints to help him be successful on his own to do it. And then there was very specific feedback about, encouragement with, you know, really accomplishing his task. You know, she had that, you did it, and they put their hands up. So very encouraging for that child to do that. So another great example of what this looks like in the classroom. So that is the conclusion of really going into the domains and the dimensions. And just what it looks like in the classroom is, sorry, let me get back to the PowerPoint. So what this looks like in the classroom is observed by a certified class observer. So with you being in a toddler classroom, the observer will be trained specifically on using the toddler assessment tool. And the class observers go through a very extensive process to become assessors or observers. And what the typical observation looks like is they will contact yourself or the director or whomever that's coordinating the scheduling to talk about best days to come. It will not be a surprise visit. This is a grant that you are voluntarily participating in, or your program is voluntarily participating in. So it will not be a surprise visit, and the director, along with the observer, will decide on the best times to visit your program. And in your classroom, they will spend approximately 2 hours. They will do what we call 4 cycles. Each cycle is a 15-minute observation. For the toddler is 15 minutes. And they will just observe and write down, and then they'll take about 10 minutes to score based on that scale that we looked at earlier. And then they will continue until they get a minimum of 4 cycles. And you know, they want to observe, they will be observing different times of the day. You know, they will observe a meal time, hopefully a center time, a free play time, and maybe a group time. So the observer will make that decision on what time of the day and how they will make that happen. But if you do have any questions leading up to that, you can definitely reach back out to the Smart Beginnings of Rappahannock area with Carol Clark or myself. And if you have more questions about the tool itself, we would be more than happy to answer those questions. Or you can reach Teachstone. They're the publishers of the class tool. They're the owners of it. So you can certainly reach out to them as well. But as far as specific to your classroom and observations, those would be questions that are directed to the Smart Beginnings of Rappahannock area. Thank you for spending the time with us, and thank you for volunteering to be for us to be in your classroom.